Hello friends and welcome. I am not doing my homework right now, so I can bring you this video on common and uncommon warding spots in 7.28b, which honestly the map hasn't changed in 7.27 that much, so it's kind of the same. If you want a more detailed explanation on why you would use any of these given spots and more, then feel free to check out the description. I have a much longer video there. I think it was like 2 hours, where I went through almost every spot I could think of that is commonly used and uncommonly used and explained why you would want them. If for some reason you don't want to watch a 2-hour video, then welcome to this video, which will be much shorter, and I'm just going to run through all these common spots. In 3 phases. So this first phase, what I have set up now, are what I think are the most common spots that a lot of people use, especially people that don't play that much support, and they're like, I don't know where to put them. These are some common spots. That's the first phase. Second phase, we will then show some sentries that are usually placed in response to these extremely common spots. And then the third phase, which you're probably most interested in, are then some still good warding spots, but they're less common and they avoid the most common sentry spots. So let's look at the common warding spots. So first off, let's start with the cliffs. Every single cliff in this game tends to get used a lot, especially in lower brackets or by cores who don't play that much support. They go ahead and just put the wards on cliffs. Feel free, like the video if you're guilty of this. And I can't really fault you. They provide great vision on the cliffs. And for good reason, the cliffs are placed in strategic locations to do just that. But because they are so good, they tend to be checked a lot. Now, some other spots. In the middle lane, you tend to get vision all along this ridge here. So I put up 4 as an example. You'll see these at the start of the game, but also even after the game progresses. Like the first 2 wards for both teams, like they tend to end up in the side lanes and the mid lane. So you'll see spots like here, you'll see spots like here, back here, or in the lane. I'm not really covering those right now. These are more for after the laning stage is broken down, what are these warding spots? We see things like seeing the common objective of Roshan, and it just is good river vision and shows you the rune spot. The other cliffs, the entrances to your jungle, these are extremely common to put for both teams, not just the Dire. Radiant will use these same spots. Both teams use the same spots, really. And then when you're pushing high ground, you have these spots in both the bases. So these are the most common warding spots. So now, hopefully we do this fast enough, let's go through some common sentry spots that check all of these common warding spots. Oops, Bane, don't die on me. So let's go get all the cliff spots, easy peasy. Let's see, also common to put a sentry here. Where else? Oh, because wards tend to end up on both sides, very common to put a sentry in the river like so. Let's make our way over here. Cliff spot, cliff spot, cliff spot. Entrance of the jungle spot, entrance of the jungle spot. Where else? Another cliff, entrance to the jungle like so, cliff, something in the middle to check. Oh, let's put it like more over here. Check the high ground and perhaps the low ground a little bit as well. Now let's make our way over here. Another cliff spot, entrance to the jungle spot, entrance to the jungle, in front of Roshan. Tends to go like here, maybe back here, maybe back here if you're on either side of the game. Radiant or Dire, what am I saying? And because you might be defending high ground, you put them here. Let's see if we got all of them. Hey, look at that. These are very common sentries to put in response to all these common warding spots. So now, last part of the video. When you press Alt, you can actually see the sentry range. Anything outside of these common sentry spots would be pretty good to use. Now, the higher you go, the more next level people will be with their sentry placement. For example, I am Crystal Maiden. What low-level Crystal Maidens tend to do is that they will still put their sentry on the high ground. Because I am not a low-level Crystal Maiden, I put it on the low ground, like so, and then I would use a spell to check the high ground. This gives me some slightly different sentry placements. And same with like all of these. Like people will have some variation. So you can have your own opinions on this, but let's work with what I have down for now. So now that I have all of these sentries to look for, what if I wanted to put a ward in this area? Well, something here is pretty common. But to be honest, it's also kind of common to have a sentry like around here. So let's put that down. So where's a good spot? This is a really sneaky spot. Right around here. Doesn't block the camp. Gives you this kind of vision you can see in the blue part. It is pretty nice. I like to use this a lot. And it avoids these common sentry spots. So the sentry in the middle to check both high grounds with a courier, or just putting sentries on both high grounds, putting a sentry on this one, putting a sentry here. All great spots. Something back here, also pretty nice. You see the same entrance, and you see kind of the lane, stuff like that. Of course, if someone starts to put their sentries towards the low ground, then they are going to spot this. But again, depending on your MMR, many people just put the sentries on these cliff spots. That's why those are the most common. Over here, I think this is pretty good. Over here, you'll notice the sentry from the cliff ends around there. So this is pretty good. You do want to keep away from the outpost. These do give true sight. Don't forget that. So over here, this is kind of dropped off. But because people tend to put their sentry like over here, you can sometimes get away with a spot like up there. And because the outpost is here, many people have gotten lazy about putting a sentry here, in my opinion. And so sometimes you can put your observer, something like this, just outside of the outpost. Now, because people put a sentry right here, you can try to avoid that. For example, placing it out here. Of course, do be careful that some people will put their sentries a little lower to check this high ground and this area, because I think this is a pretty common spot to ward. So what you can do, you can put your ward over on this side, where if you press and hold Alt, you'll see, hey, we're outside of common sentry spots. Now this vision will survive for a bit. Behind towers, all of that. I actually don't want to talk too much about lane wards, but those are viable, putting it like here or here, stuff like that. Now over here, let's come here. So I want to ward this area, but I want to avoid these common sentry spots. So something along here, a little less valuable information than compared to here, but over here, it's extremely likely to get dewarded by all these spots. So somewhere along here, not as good vision, very likely to survive though. Let's put it like there. Over here, I really like this spot back here because it avoids this cliff. And even though many people do put a sentry like in this area, it tends to be like in this area. And so they miss this little ledge here. So I use this spot a lot. Over here, again, you can put it behind the tower if you want. In the mid lane, honestly, these spots just tend to get checked a lot. It's really hard to get a ward here to survive. Having said that, putting it like over here can survive. But you'll notice the vision's not that great. But I like this side way more. Oops. Because people tend to put their sentry here, and sometimes they will put their sentry on their own high ground, like so. But you can then put a ward like in this area around here, and you'll notice we're missing this sentry and the sentries from up there, and you can still see the rune, you can still see this camp, you can see this little area. It's pretty nice, especially if you're on the dire side. Over here, because this is the most common place to put a sentry, really good to put a ward here. I'd say this is also relatively common though, and so many people have learned to put their sentry like so, and have some kind of high ground checking spell or courier check this, which has made this area pretty good. You'll notice that this sentry does cover a lot of this, but not the very edge. So don't get lazy, don't just put the ward here, because that'll be in the sentry. Put it along these edges, and there's a good chance your ward will survive. Let's, I think both are fine, like over here or over here. It's kind of up to you what you want to see. Those are fine. Up here, you'll notice this little corner right here. Unlikely to get spotted. Pretty decent vision. And especially, the more they put this sentry to the right, the better. Especially because putting a ward right here, decent, fairly common. So if you want a sentry to cover that, your sentry tends to make its way over here, and you notice this sentry misses this chunk right here. So an observer in this area, also not bad. You'll also notice this sentry doesn't cover right up here. Oh, this one, hold on. So like this one, which I would say is very common to use instead of like this one, can miss this upper part of the box a little bit. So if you're like doing Roshan and you're the Dyer, I think it's fine to put a ward at this very edge of the camp, because you'll see this ledge here and it's unlikely to get dewarded. So we can go ahead and put that, but it will get spotted eventually because it's going to block the camp and then people will know. I personally don't find this vision that useful, this ward spot down here. Sorry, the blue is getting like weird. It's like comparing to like old wards. So just do your best to imagine, or do this yourself and then remove some of these old wards. But I think seeing this spot of the secret shop is just not that useful, even though you avoid this spot. So I don't use this that often. I have seen it used though. But typically when dewarding this high ground, if I'm not putting my sentry on the high ground, I'm putting it here or I'm putting it like here. And so in my opinion, I never use this spot. And I'll try to use this spot if I want vision in this area. Yeah. And I tend not to put wards here because of this sentry right here. If you're worried they're going to put sentries here, the sentry also tends to get placed like back here as well. And so you'll notice this sentry misses this corner. This one would get it, but if you really do want to ward here, it is smart to like put it along the edge and hope that you are just missing that sentry. Putting in this area, also very common to miss because it's common to put the sentry here or over here. And so this area, because it's so close to the outpost, tends to get away without getting caught. And you can then put your sentry or your ward like anywhere here. Some people like to put it in the tree here because this is pretty good vision. And even if they have a sentry, they may miss it because the tree blocks their vision. Over here in this corner, I think this one's pretty solid. Actually, I should just go ahead and place this, huh? I think this corner is pretty solid because this sentry is so common. Now, we are taking so long. The sentries are dying. Because this sentry is so common, it misses this corner, so this one's pretty good. Over on this side, you can put your observers like around here as well. This is solid vision. Misses these cliffs. Let me redo this cliff. You'll notice this little chunk tends to get missed, and so I like a spot right here. I use this one a lot. If they catch on to that, I also like to use this spot a lot. You know why? Because no one really puts a sentry here all that much. It is kind of weird vision, but I don't know, people just don't seem to get it very often. So it works out. Let's go ahead and reapply these sentries. But actually, I don't really need to. Actually, that's most of the spots. And again, you can just get weirder and weirder with it. Put down the sentries you think are the most common. And yeah, you can put wards here. That's fine. You can put wards here. That's fine. It's not that weird to put a sentry back here, though. People tend to just like drop it in the middle if they're like defending this tower versus an invis hero. It's very common to put a sentry here. Sometimes you put it on either side, but for that reason, if you think it's going to be in the middle, the further you get to the side, the more likely your wards are to survive. Same with like all these cliffs and stuff. Like this spot is very common to put a sentry, which means you can bet and hope that like this ward will survive, even though it is very possible that someone puts their sentry here and gets it. It's just about the chance. And if it gets dewarded once, just don't do it again. All right, that's it. I know there's probably like other stuff like along the edge, the high ground, in the lane, in the base, things like that. But if I were to go into all of them, you end up with a 2-hour video, which I don't think most people want to see. So this was a really quick rundown on a lot of different spots. Hopefully it's still useful and not like too jumping around. But I hope this helps. Let me know if it doesn't. We can come back to it again. Warding is a very big part of supporting, so it is really important. Maybe you just have to watch the 2-hour video. I don't know. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. See ya. I gotta go do my homework.